Welcome to the Academy for Men's Tribal Fire Podcast. I'm Michael Gibson.
And I'm Lance Cole.
Yo, man, you ready to start a fire?
Yeah, let's light it up.
All right, welcome to the Academy for Men's Tribal Fire Podcast. My name is Michael Gibson. I've got Lance Cole as my co-host today, and I have a very special set of, not just one guest, but a set of guests. And these are gentlemen who come from the world of men's work, who are doing important work in the journey that men take, and actually having men go through what we most miss in life, which is sort of like going through a men's rite of passage. And I had the opportunity to be a part of one of the most, I would say, transformative experiences in my life, which is ReMenBer. And I did this in Costa Rica at a place called Ali. It was fantastic. I had an amazing time. It was so transformative. And the gentleman that I'm bringing on today, that Lance and I are going to be interviewing today, are two of the lead facilitators. Now, there are actually four facilitators with ReMenBer. And the first one is Nimai, and Nimai is unable to make it today. He's in Israel. It's just really late, and he's been traveling for a lot of months, I think it is. And then we have Frank.
Father.
He's a father now too.
Just had a baby.
Yeah. He's a brand new father. And Frank Mondese, who's also been traveling, and he's working today and wasn't able to make it here today. But I've got two very important men that I want to introduce you to, and they are the pillars of this. I don't even know what to call it. It's a journey. It's a men's journey. And so I'd like to introduce you to them separately. The first one is an angel investor. He's a facilitator. He's a speaker. He's around the world. He's an angel investor. I mean, he's amazing. And probably I call him a friend. And for me, I meet people all the time, and it's very rare that I run into people of this quality and character. And so his name is Oren. Gil Oren. And Gilly, say hi.
Hi. Thank you, Michael, my friend.
Oh, good to see you, my friend.
You too.
Yeah, I love you, man. I really do.
I love you, brother. Yeah.
And the other facilitator, who is also a facilitator with ReMenBer, he's an organizer. He organizes all kinds of different events, including ISTA. I don't know if you know about the International School of Temple Arts, but ISTA is one of his organizing practices. And he's also an entrepreneur, and as I hear it, quite a wild man. And his name is Philippe Lewis. Welcome, Philippe, to the podcast.
Thank you. Yeah, seriously, all the ladies say that, or
Your reputation precedes you, brother.
Yeah, that tends to happen too.
And of course, we have our co-host today, Lance Cole. Lance is my brother in arms. He is one of my Tribal Fire. I would say he's the pillar of Tribal Fire Podcast. And welcome, Lance. Love you, brother. How you been?
I'm doing good, Michael. Thank you.
And all the good things that I say about them, I could say about Lance as well. So guys, I welcome you to the podcast. We're really happy to have you. I'd like to go ahead and start out a little bit about who you are. I mean, let's find out a little bit about who you are, because it's important to know, the kind of the backgrounds and how you came about getting into men's work. There's a huge shift, I think, in the world today, moving from, this unconscious kind of, caveman man into this conscious man who's really interested in sacred sexuality, shamanism, and all the rest. And so kind of give us a little bit of your background on how you got into that, and also tell us a little bit about your life. Where do you come from? Who are you? And how did you get into sacred sexuality and men's work? And let's start with you, Gil.
Thank you, Michael. It's an honor. Well, I was very lucky. I was born in Tel Aviv, and I'm turning 50 this year. So 2020 is a big year for me.
Yeah, congratulations.
And I would say, the silver lining of my life was brotherhood. I was born to a very strong father, a military commander and that then became an entrepreneur and a very successful businessman. I had two biological brothers. I'm the oldest. And I always remember myself being just interested in the connection, interaction, and play with boys and then men. I was very competitive. I went into soccer at a very early age and got into being the captain of a professional team, playing in the academy of youth national team. So it's been a lot of connection, team leadership with men. And then, as you know, we all have to serve, and we had a mandatory service of 3.5 years. I was an elite combat unit commander. And I think that's kind of like how life took me in this path, and in many, many different experiences with masculine energy and men. And at some point, I think the military was my first awakening to start really discerning and understanding how this energy can serve or distract, how this energy can support and empower or disempower. And in my 20s, I went into business, of course, and started an international toy company with family, got to travel the world, and learning more and more how to interact, how to relate with international and different cultures, and finding a way to relate, and being really, really, really more interested in the quality of the interaction and the results. And then I found out, I moved to the US early 2000, and over there, the men's movement started to awaken, mostly with David Deida and his work. I was pretty fortunate really early, I would say close to 20 years ago, to start being trained and coached and mentored in that movement. I did about 8 years of deep work around his context and ideas in New York, and just kept going. At some point, I was more impacted by shamanism and what we called more, the wild man, the shamanism, the people of the earth, and was initiated and mentored in this lineage, including building my home in Costa Rica. And in the last 4 or 5 years, I would say it was more around conscious and sacred sexuality, where I started to relate to the lower chakras and to the movement of Eros, and finding a way to relate to brothers around these energies that are really intense. And so a lot of this work today, beyond the creation of ReMenBer with 3 of my dearest brothers from ISTA, I lead men's circles in Boulder. We do intimate nights. We also do more of a regular men's circles. I coach, I mentor, I help couples to deal with intimacy and open relating. Yeah, and I see that my medicine with men is deep and profound. I can relate to men in so many different areas of life. In between, I was married, got divorced, raising 2 boys, having the experience of initiate boys in the American culture to an alternative reality. And yes, so absolutely see it as my life purpose, see it as my medicine, and super empowered and honored to be in that field.
Wow, thank you for that. And very interested to learn more about how that has influenced your creation of ReMenBer. And we'll talk about that here in a little bit. Philippe, let's jump over to you. I'd like to know a little bit, where do you come from? Who are you? I think you might be French.
Close.
Or Canadian. French
just
Canadian.
enough to work with the ladies, or girls, or women, or however they want to be called today these days. Yeah. What? I mean,
So really, where do you come from? Like, who are you? Where do you come from? And
I got that.
What has influenced you?
I was gonna crack a joke. What do you want to call? What do people want to be called? What do they want to be called? What they want to be called? Whether it's their name, from the Dale Carnegie, Win Friends and Influence People book from way back when, but also, people really want to be seen, and I think my journey has been a journey of discovering who I am and what I have to bring in terms of medicine. So I actually really welcome Gil's sharing, because it kind of helped me structure my thoughts a little bit. So I was born in Montreal 48 years ago. So I get to look at Gil and see what I can look forward to growing into. And yeah, 50, fuck yeah. So I was born in Montreal, and I was the first of two children. And my parents were generally very progressive. Like, I went to school, and we had the choice between morals and religion, which was generally Christian religion. And I chose morals, and my parents let us choose, and they always sort of like offered a pretty good portrayal of what parenting looks like. I mean, they're not perfect by any means, but I can't look at my parents back. I can't look back at my parents and think of any time they've ever betrayed me or lied to me or done something wrong, which is, wow, that's highly unlikely of most people. And so I feel extremely lucky. In a way, it could also mean that I was fairly sheltered, but I also kind of grew up with this sort of what I'd like to call fairly even view on life and reality. So so I didn't grow. So one of the things is I didn't grow up with boy culture. I didn't become part of a group of boys. I didn't have to kind of make my way and push my way into a group of boys and hold my sort of masculinity versus theirs. I sort of grew up with like one best friend or two best friends, and then ended up became a nerd and studied science and did science fairs and very, very different in who I am today. But it kind of like kept me away from the sort of culture that changes you, that you have to recover from later. And the things that really started my men's work was actually starting to go out with the first few girlfriends started to go out with, including my first long-term relationship. This person was actually being abused by her grandfather while we were going out.
Wow.
And that kind of sort of indirect intensity of having to deal with someone who was going through that while making me promise not to say anything to her mom, because her dad just died from cancer, and she was like, no way she could hear that. And so that kind of pressure cooker launched me on a 30-year sort of exploration of my own masculinity and masculinity in general, and also a journey around misandry, around looking at myself, knowing that it might be possible for me to express the same kind of abuse that she was receiving, and having to make peace with that, my own darkness, so to speak, and having to rise up beyond that and know for myself that with all the work that I've done, that this would never happen.
No.
So fast forward about 20 years into that 30 years, I'm doing this thing called the RT experience, which is something from the Bay Area that's sort of a response, like a kind of an emotional intelligence / circling response to Landmark. So if Landmark is all about don't let your emotions have you, this was the other way around. This was like circling is how do you feel? How does everybody feel in looking at you, feeling into yourself? And the result from that experience was that I was told you need to join a men's circle. So I joined what's called the men's circle here in the Bay Area, about 100 men circling together. And for the first time, I had an experience of men in kind of the way that Gilly was, I imagine he was talking about, like being with men and what do men do and what are men about. And that was like brand new experience for me. So I kind of came into it not really knowing what I was about, and sort of dove in. And then from there, I started to realize that there was a way that men were, at least as a culture, in the U.S., because now I was in the U.S., and that there's a way that men were as a culture in the U.S. that I never felt like I could fit in. Partially because I didn't grow up in it, but also partially because I found my own way. And my own way didn't have a whole lot of sexism in it. My own way didn't have a whole lot of all the things that cis white men are accused of these days, because it's politically correct to do that. And so I started sort of suggesting to other people, like, well, why not do it this other way? Why not do it in a way that, why not do masculinity in a way that's actually really supportive and really supportive of the feminine, really supportive of men? Like, what is it that men get from patriarchy? And it started looking to me like men were getting also the short end of the stick, just like everybody else. And so there we are. So there we are. Like a few years ago, when I'm starting to teach these classes, these sort of soft masculine classes, these classes about men not being all raw and being raw with each other, which looked too hard for me. I was like, well, what about the really sensitive, sweet things that is not feminine, but it is, and that is still masculine? And I actually created that, and in response to that, I started teaching that with my son as well, and realized that all the things that I was teaching a few years ago about this, I'm teaching my son now, who's 8 years old. So about a year or two ago, Frank and Nimai came to me and said, hey, we want to start this thing. We know you're a good organizer, but we also trust you as a man, and we would like you to also co-facilitate with us. And there we are today with the ReMenBer Brotherhood journey, which is such a good fit for me in terms of the values and the ways that masculinity is presented.
Wow. Wow. That's amazing.
Wonderful. Thank you both for that. That's amazing. Could you guys describe a little bit about how you guys work together? Like I can hear the distinction between the two of you, between your personalities and your backgrounds and kind of how you carry yourselves. Kind of give us a general idea of how you work it when you're working in the forum with however many guys, 15, 20, 30 guys. How does that look?
You mean, how do we relate as facilitators?
Yeah. How do you relate as facilitators?
Well, I mean,
how do you divide it up? How is it? How do you flow? Give us an idea of that.
It's a really, really, really great question, because I would say my deepest motivation to join the vision that Nimai and Frank brought, because I was also invited. It kind of happened in my house in Costa Rica. We have this tradition that every year we all meet there, drop into a heart space and creating. I was just really inspired by the way we were relating as brothers. And I was very clear that for me, I'm very curious beyond the fact that we all are really, really good in creating content and leading experiences and practices. That was not the challenge. The challenge was, and I thought that, I'm really curious that if the way we relate bring a certain codes to man that can shift consciousness really fast. And I couldn't even imagine the impact that did. So I would say that 80% of the quality, I think, of the ReMenBer has to do with the way we relate. And that's because we've been in deep trainings together. You know, the Easter work we've been doing together, the movement of Eros, the ability to drop in to real feedback, to own our shadows, to meet each other with unconditional love, but also with I would say definitely the fierce sword, the lotus fierce sword that we can give each other when we are not aligned. Specifically with Philippe as a brother, it's definitely one of my best friends. I feel completely accepted and loved and seen, and at the same time, he can call on me in every given moment, and we give each other space. And I think the energy between men sitting together when there is, I would say, almost no competition, no desire to dominate the space, kind of more of allowing each other to emerge with our gifts. And obviously, we plan, we sit together, we design, we make sure that we know how the flow is, how to serve the group, we listen. But I'm very, very inspired. It's not easy to have four very powerful men, four facilitators that have so much to share and so much wisdom to give, and have a space where it naturally flows. Naturally, we barely trigger each other. When we do, we move through that fast. And yeah, that's really what I have to say. I'm enjoying it. I'm inspired. I can do it all day. We enjoy being together. We chill together. It's just really, really fun.
That's awesome. That's amazing. This sounds amazing. And I hear you about being in space without competition. Having that happen for the four of you must be an incredible dynamic to witness. And then also, you are all four of you very powerful men. I mean, I don't know you personally, Gilly, but I've met everybody. Well, actually, I don't know Nima either, actually, but I know Philippe and Frank, and I know they're very powerful men. And yeah, what a gift. What a gift. Thank you for that.
Thank
Philippe,
you.
any comments on that?
Yeah, there's it's interesting because, you know, I've heard the word powerful come up a number of times, and there's this distinction that we make during the journey, which is like difference between power and force. And for me, powerful is like a martial art, as well-trained martial artist is powerful because he gets to use the right and also often minimal amount of power or amount of force to create movement in just the right place. So to me, that's power. It's the wisdom plus all the resources that come along with that wisdom, whether it's physical strength or knowledge or timing. It could be a lot of there could be a lot of things you bring, or it could be money as well. And so power is the ability to create change with the resource that we have, that requires wisdom. And what I see, what I see a lot of in this particular training is this Frank and Nima, the sort of the two young buck, and who are the main leaders, and I see Gilly and me, and it's not always like that, but I see very often Gilly and I are just sitting there as the pillars, and not necessarily the elders because we're not that old yet, but we're, you know, we've got some amount of experience, whether it's in fatherhood or in the work that we do, and there's something really beautiful about being able to rest in that pillarness, so to speak, and support these two men who have a beautiful vision. And then again, every once in a while, we get a chance to kind of step into the center and be supported by the others as well. And that also feels really good. But I think at this point in my life, I'm really, really enjoying sitting back and letting men do what they need to do. And if I have something to contribute or add, without pushing, without prodding, and without attachment, then this is where I like to be.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you for sharing that, because I really got to see that happen. So I was fortunate enough to be in Costa Rica for the level 2 ISTA program, and then after that, and by the way, the three of us were there together. What a unique experience that was. And then I had the unique privilege and opportunity to drive with Gilly up to his place in Costa Rica, and I have to tell you, it is stunning. I mean, it is a paradise on earth, and not only that, but to be able to be with that man, and we had the most amazing playlist. My heart, like, I was in tears sometimes. Other times I was like, yeah, it's amazing, right, Gil?
Oh yeah, Michael.
And we had some deep conversations. Such
a beautiful road.
It was a beautiful road trip. Talk to us a little bit about the way that ReMenBer is set up is not like a workshop. And when I got there, I didn't have the sense that I was entering into like workshop space or anything like that. It really was a journey. It felt like a journey from beginning to end. And I'd like you to comment on that, and just either one of you, just comment on what the flow of it is, and then also some of the dynamics. I mean, we went into the shadow, and we got into like a bunch of different spaces, and you know, having intimacy and all of that. Share that with us, if you would.
Philippe,
I don't recall the exact. It's 5 days, and and I have to say, it feels like it's such a deep journey. I don't recall the exact. And we didn't create the curriculum. So I mean, there's shadow, there's light, there's dark, and there's the feminine, and then there's the masculine. If I get it right, or I'm close, or either way, I'm close enough. And for me, a workshop is here's what we're going to do. And then we go down the list. And a journey is one where we have a sense of where we're going. Like, here's the mountain over there. We're going to go, or hopefully we're going to get there, and this is where we're going. But as a team of facilitators, we're sort of like, okay, we have a sense, and these are the stopping points or the milestones. But and we have a sense of what can be, what each of us can bring. But there's enough resources between all four of us that at any point in time we might make a little side trip, or we might decide, okay, this is what we're seeing as a rising between the men, and we should bring this new piece onto the table. And so, as a journey, our attempt is to take men with us, and we're walking with them. We're not just like, directing them with a microphone, like go here and go there. No, we're actually taking the journey with the men. And so, even though we have a sense of where we're going, so there's a little bit less of a surprise, we're actually going on this journey with the men. And we invite the men to come with us. And so it's a how do I call that? It's a series of frames and rituals and exercises. I mean, at the purest technical form of it. But the reality of it is that we're all in this together, and we all sort of, all of us together in the field of it, we decide where we're going next.
Mm. It sounds really organic.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah. Philippe?
Yes. Thank you, Philippe. I mean, Philippe is always so articulated, and so I'll try to give my perspective. Yeah, I feel that in the journey we listen. We really, really do listen. Every time we have a different group of men, come from different backgrounds and different, I would say, excitements and passions in life, and also deep challenges, and we listen. And as Philippe said, I think we have enough resources and wisdom and creativity to absolutely design a journey that can mostly serve them. And we do that on a daily basis. And I would say even in every break, we sit down and we feel into the space and we see what can serve the man now. I agree that it's a rite of passage. I agree that it's an initiation. I feel that there is a vision, and we do present archetypes. We do present a vision of what's possible today as an integrated man. I'm very careful to use this language. We know the masculine, the feminine, the integrated man, as you said, power, it's a language that can be very confusing. And at the same time, because we are not today organized as a tribe, we don't have the impact and the influence of elders. We are not being initiated in rite of passages. There is a need, and we do have definitely very, very interesting, and I think deep and very holistic places where we can take the men on a journey and have them experience the integration of archetypes, the integration of chakras, the integration of the different energies that men can experience, and really have an embodied experience of that at the end, when they leave, they have an experience of what's possible when I'm actually connected to my entire being. The other piece that I think that we are very unique in is how deep we can go in intimacy between men. Mm. And experiencing so much men's work on earth, I'm really, really inspired. I think because the way we relate to our own sexuality, how healed and empowered we are on that, can enable us to take men to places that can be very uncomfortable, but super transformative. And have them really, really understand that intimacy and sexuality are different, that you are a sovereign being around your choices, that you are connected in any given moment to your boundaries and pleasure. And I feel that what we've been doing with ReMenBer really, really inspire me, and I don't see this happening much. There's a lot of work in the, I would say, New Age self-help industry around the higher chakras, around the heart and the truth and speaking your power. and definitely being connected more to your visions and even spirit. But the ability to go down and dive into the shadow and the places that are so uncomfortable and the places that bring all the shame and fear is very unique to ReMenBer. And I'm very grateful that Ista initiated us to the capacity to hold space for that.
Wow, that sounds really amazing. Beautiful. I wanted some things that you said, Gilly, about when you were speaking about rites of passage and then elders and things like that. So the four of you come together and you're expressing this journey for men, and you're presenting it to men. And you mentioned that you don't have elders and you don't have these things, and I see that, I get that, but at the same time, I feel as though there's a freshness and there's a newness to what masculinity and what femininity is on the planet. And I feel as though, like, just in the ISTA community that I've been involved in, that it's changing and shifting. And there are new elders coming in. And I look at the four of us as elders. I look at you and Philippe as elders in this community, as elders of a new thought space. And I want to acknowledge that. I want to acknowledge the courage and the drive and everything that the two of you have here, and then also Frank and Iman, to do this and to bring this forward on the planet. And I want to acknowledge that, because I believe you are elders, the both of you, and I believe that you don't need to go through rites of passage. You've already been there and you've done it, and now you're creating new ones for everybody else. And I think that's amazing and beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome.
I think one reality is that we don't go through one hero's journey in our life. There's always multiple hero's journey unfolding in front of our eyes, or with the people that we're with and with ourselves. And so there's some people, by the time they're 10, they've gone through 5 heroes journey, and they're lucky to be alive. Right. And I think eldership as a role is one where you get to share the wisdom of what you've learned. For me, it was this sort of 30-year journey around misandry and around hating myself as a man, and coming back from that and saying, no, I'm not that man who could have hurt that person. And for somebody else, it's something else. And so eldership is to be able to recognize that regardless of age, and be able to say, I have some wisdom I have some arising and emerging wisdom that I want to share, and I want to continue to share as it continues to arise. And I think one of the very, very beautiful and very unique things about ReMenBer, from where I'm sitting, is that we give the experience to all the men, that each of them is a kind of a shining facet of the jewel of the one, so to speak, from a spiritual standpoint. Like, they all have something to bring to the table that's very unique, that is their form of eldership or their form of wisdom. And if we can just slow down and listen to each other, then there's no need for competition anymore. And and competition is and there's something good about competition, but there's also something good about being able to listen and compete to be the best that we can be on the level that we're the best at. Yeah. And that's what I seek. And that's my vision for ReMenBer, and that's my vision for the men that I teach.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
Now, Lance and I.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Go ahead, Michael.
Lance and I have done a number of these podcasts, and one of the first podcasts that we did really dealt with competition versus companionship. And Lance can speak to this, because he's done the work to wrap his mind around what it means to be in companionship instead of competition. And I just want to make one comment before I hand it back to him. And that is to say that one of the treasures that I took away from ReMenBer Journey in Costa Rica was this ability to be intimate with a brother, and to have this and to know that it was sensual and not sexual. And that's unique and rare. Like, to be in the arms of another man who's just holding you, who's just there for you. It's kind of like it feels like as if, you know, I were on the battlefield and I were dying, that man would be there for me to hold me through the last moments and my last breaths. And it felt like that. It was that tender, that like that intimate. And I want to thank you for sharing that with me, because that was like the last part, and it was the best part. It was the part that allowed me to go, wow, I can really receive love from another man. And I think that's so missing, because I didn't get it from my father. I didn't get it from my father figure, and I haven't gotten it in life from other men. And so I like, as a journey, and believe me, it was a journey to get there. That's one of the treasures that I took away. So thank you both.
Wow. Yeah. That's beautiful, Michael.
I love it, Michael. And there is something in terms of what's really is happening today on the planet. Is there's one perspective of the feminine rising, and the feminine rising is really, really important now. And I think that the responsibility of men today to heal the thousands of years of dominance and oppression and taking power and taking resources and power over others, we really have a unique opportunity to hold infinite, loving, unconditional space for the expression of the feminine. So all this rage and pain and anger or frustration and resentment or whatever is so uncomfortable for men to sit in, because it's the fire, can be held by a man, and at the same time not actually taking on the projections of past generations and taking a stand that men are good. And at the brotherhood journey and the ReMenBer, we actually are taking such a stand, because the quality of men that we meet are just good men. They're men that are good, they're doing good, they hold amazing space for the women, they really care, they will travel all the way to the jungle of Costa Rica, pay money, sit in the fire for 5 days, be uncomfortable, because they want to grow. And I think that eventually today I hold the possibility of a man completely receiving all this energy to heal the feminine, while taking such a stand for the goodness and the purity and the innocence of its soul, and not taking, like what Philippe said, we all know the shame, obviously coming up from a war zone, I cannot even tell the PTSD of the shame of the warrior and what I had to do to heal that, and really on the fact that my masculine energy and my man and my warrior are good and can be in service. And I had to find ways to be inspired to actually move in that direction, like Philippe says, move in a direction where those energies can serve the good. And I think it's really important for men to take a stand for men today, for the goodness. Yeah.
So good.
You touched on the point of the feminine rising and how important that is on the planet today, and all the energy that's around that, or that could be around that in different situations. And the thing that I love and what I'm hearing throughout this conversation is the connection, the human part of it, right? So you guys are presenting this journey, soon to be around the world in many different places. And it's a journey into the aspect of understanding of what it is to be a human being. And what I also hear in that is that the feminine is also in us men. And this, to me, what I hear you guys expressing and sharing is that you're essentially teaching men how to be with that aspect in themselves, so that they can carry it through to the rest of the planet. Embody that femininity and that rage and that frustration and all those things that you listed, because the feminine is rising, but it's not just rising in women, it's rising in men. And that's what I hear that you're sharing is allowing that connected space with other men to regain or relearn how to feel, how to be with another brother in a space like Michael described, where it's non-sexual, moving the fear away from being next to another human being, and actually being able to receive love and understand what that feels like. I mean, what a gift you guys are bringing to the planet. My God, thank you.
And I think that's the conversation around bringing the integrated man, like without being too woo or technical or labeling about it. I mean, if you what's a man that as he is moving through the world and moving through his life and moving through his purpose or being moved by his purpose, an integrated man naturally supports the feminine arising and the masculine and the healthy masculine arising.
Yes.
That just happens because that's the most, well, at the primal level, it's the most adaptive thing to do, but it's also the most morally balanced thing to do as well.
Yeah, beautifully said.
Yeah, and I'd like to add to that, if I may, the integrated man is also aware of his natural surroundings and is responsible for them and responsible for the healing of the feminine in the female body, and takes a stand for that. And that's something that I really got as well. There were so many different things that I could just pick them out of the air. Listen, how does a man watching this podcast connect and find out more about the ReMenBer journey?
I mean, that's pretty straightforward. You can find us on our website. It's ReMenBerjourney.com. And then there'll be a list of the 2 trainings that are coming. There'll be more. The next one is happening in Northern California, May 1st to 5th. And then the next one is happening in Montreal, Quebec, Canada. Let's see, September 27th to October 1st. So it's a 5-day journey with a celebration at the end. It could be longer, but it could not be shorter. It takes time for men to connect. It takes time for something that feels like a journey to happen without rushing and without trying to cram too much in just a few days. So highly encourage men who feel the call, or feel the alignment. And that's not something that's easy to feel. Like, what's the alignment? And in order to, a lot of men operate by, what are my goals? Is this part of my goals? And I'm moving towards my goals. And that's one way to feel the alignment. But often there's sort of a reaching for something that's not already present. And I'd like to think that feeling the alignment is feeling for what's needed right now, moving forward. Instead of reaching out for something that is not present already. You might feel the pull, but it's good to feel inside of oneself. And so if you feel the call, if you hear the call, but you feel it inside of you right now, or if you're feeling moved by this conversation, you feel like this conversation is stirring something inside of you right now. To me, that's feeling the alignment. And if you feel it, then come and join us, because we want you. We want you to be ready. We want you to show up, not to get something, but to experience and move with us and find out with us what it's like to be a man in this day and age.
Love it.
Wow, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. And we'll go ahead and make sure that we put in the YouTube notes below how to get to your website, how to find you, and then also if there are any questions, certainly there's a contact page. ReMenBer Journey coming to California May 1st through 5th, and then I believe you said in September, Montreal, and continuing around the world. I know that there'll be another one in Costa Rica eventually, and hopefully you'll come back maybe to the Southwest again after that. Thank you, gentlemen, so much for being here with us. On behalf of Lance Cole and the Academy for Men's Tribal Fire Podcast, Bill, Oren, and Philippe Lewis, we love you. We appreciate you. We thank you for being with us today on the podcast.
Thank you, Michael. I love you, brother. Thank you, Lance. Such a pleasure to meet you.
Thank you, Lance. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you, Philippe.